Okay, you guys. So I am so happy that I get to show you these teachings because to me, it's like everyone remembers a person that first taught them how to roll a joint. Like that took the time to be like, look, nobody was born knowing how to roll a joint. I'm going to show you these little hacks. And then every time you roll a joint for the rest of your life, you think about that person. So I am so thrilled that I get to be this person for you. And I'm just going to ask that everybody keeps an eye on just keep an eye. If you hear a sound in the background, make sure that it's not coming from you, and do me a favor and just put yourself on mute. So I've got my Rajneesh Puram shirt on right now, and I thought it would be a cool way to open this discussion because when that documentary about Osho came out on Netflix, I was like, I fucking knew it about Osho. I fucking knew it about Osho. These Osho people are all so weird, like yada, yada, yada. And then I realized that I really thought about it. And I realized that even though I wasn't teaching Osho stuff or I wasn't dosing people's buffets, how did Osho manage to assemble such a large crowd? Like he had such a huge following of people. He had multiple Rolls Royces. He had crazy custom made outfits. You don't assemble a crowd of people that large if you're just teaching like parlor tricks. If you're just teaching little bullshits, like nobody's going to assemble around you. And something that Ram Dass said that I think is really useful is like steal everything you can from a teacher. Literally steal every single thing that you can. You're going to go through a lot of teachers in your life before you meet the one that's like really doing it for you. And for a lot of people, for 2/3 of spiritual teachers, they're here to sample lots of different lineages. It's only 1/3 of spiritual teachers that are here to kind of follow one lineage all the way to the end. So just because, like, all teachers are human, all teachers are flawed, no teachers are gods, everyone makes mistakes. A cow gives milk. You turn the cow around, and there's a hole where it gives shit. Everything that has the ability to nourish also has the ability to create waste. So you have to decide, do you want to be an expert in nourishment or do you want to be an expert in shit? Because most people are experts in shit. I'm a deeply flawed person, Osho, a deeply flawed person, all of my favorite teachers, Gurdjieff, deeply flawed people. But the need for a teacher to be perfect, to check all of the boxes so that you can learn from them, no. This is just you feeling like you need to be perfect to even throw your hat into the ring. So come to this conversation and steal everything that you can with my blessing. If something's not resonating with you, discard it. Don't trust me at all. I'm just going to give you these tests that you can try out on yourself. And if they are giving you a result that you like, continue. If you come to this conversation and you're hearing all new things that you've never heard before and you like the way that that makes you feel, continue. So we have a stacked class plan today. And it's not Osho, although Osho did study this method. Everything that I am teaching you in today's lesson is coming from a lineage called the Fourth Way. Who here, raise your hand if you've ever heard of the Fourth Way. So the Fourth Way is a teaching that was really began by a teacher named G.I. Gurdjieff. And Gurdjieff was trained by a lot of different teachers, but mainly he went around to all of these different hidden, secret, esoteric schools in the Middle East. And a lot of this was really influenced by the Sufis. A lot of this it was a collective called the Sarmung Brotherhood, where it's not a religion. Nothing that I'm teaching you here is religious. This is not a theology. It's not a God. It's just like esoteric physics. What do all religions agree on? How can we test this data without faith? And this is why it works really well for me, because Gurdjieff is spelled Gurdjieff. And for me, this teacher is like, I'm in love with him. I'm in love with him. I'm writing a book about being seduced by him. That's how in love with him I am. Like, this is the only man that does for me what my husband does for me. I'm just like, oh, like in love. And when I was first introduced to this path, the teacher who initiated me for a lot of money, the teacher who initiated me just kind of explained, like, look, if you're a fourth way person, nothing else is really going to do it for you. And I had explored and studied a lot of different lineages, Kundalini yoga, Tantra. I spent a lot of time in Ifa. And every single time I got close to one of these, they would be like, oh, yeah, you know, you're Kundalini, you're Tantra, you're Ifa. Like, you got to initiate, you got to do the priestess, and you got to do this whole thing. And it never really like, it didn't feel like me. And so when I was told this about fourth way, like, hey, if you're a fourth way student, Vedanta, Advaita, these things aren't really going to work for you the same way. I was like, you know, we'll see, because everybody says that. But I started studying the fourth way earnestly, like with my whole heart, really, really wanting to learn and really, really wanting to grow. In 2019, it's now 2024, and I'm like more hooked than ever. But these are not like my beliefs. As a teacher, what I try to do is just show you what a lot of different religions, or what a lot of different esoteric schools all agree on, especially with topics like death or what happens after death. I think it's really important to know that there's a lot of different ways of looking at this. So don't feel like here in this class, like I'm saying, this is the way, this is the only way. It's just the best way that I've found so far. And if you're this type of person, if you're cynical, if you've been done dirty by religion, if you're not into this like leap and I'll catch you, not doing trust falls with your spirituality, you just want something that you can hold, something that you can sink your teeth into, and results that you can feel working right away. Like something that you're like, oh shit. For me, I didn't start getting results at all until I started working on this path. And there's a lot of different types of students out in the world. Like, some people want to dabble with spirituality, and for them, the exoteric, or if we watch our mute, please. That I'm distracted if I have to come and mute people. Now, let you mute yourself, but I really don't want to be like a grunt about this. So just do me a favor and check and see if you're on mute. Thank you so much. I've done this plenty of times. Please, you guys. So there's 3 levels of spirituality. There's the exoteric, and the exoteric is religion. The exoteric is the world of duality, and your first awakening is all going to happen. Your very first spiritual awakening of 3, if you're lucky, will all happen in the exoteric. So raise your hand if you've had a spiritual awakening where you realize that there's a way to consciously engage with your life, so that you're not just somebody that things happen to, but you actually can take part in designing your own destiny. Yeah, this is the first awakening, where you realize, oh my God, there's the seen world, which I've been toiling in my whole life. There's the unseen world. I've always known about it. I've always known that there were these secrets, but I've never really gone after it. And now I'm going after it, and I'm seeing these amazing results in my life. This is your first spiritual awakening, and congratulations. Totally different level of consciousness, right? The person you were before you had this realization is totally different than the person you are now. New friend circle, new look, new interests, new boundaries. Basically, everything that was sustaining your life up until your spiritual awakening, like, no longer worked. And now you need new nourishment. You need new diet. You need new boundaries. You need new practices. So this is always what happens when you are ready for a new level of consciousness, when you're ready to learn and grow more. You grew an inch. Amazing. Now, before you had that spiritual awakening, when you were reaching the top of that pre-awakened level, everything that had been working for you up until that point will stop working. So let's say that like you were self-medicating and that was really working for you, or just like always being in a relationship so that you didn't really have to get alone and think about stuff. Or maybe you had even things that you really liked where you're like, just writing in my journal does it for me. But when all of your tricks stop working, this is usually a sign that you need new tricks. So the exoteric is the first level, and we're all incarnated into this level. And the main belief system that holds up this level is the battle of good, bad, right, and wrong. So God and the devil, entities, evil forces, heaven and hell, punishment and reward. People say there's no escaping the duality of life. To me, there is no bigger red flag for a limited view of what spirituality is than that statement, because there absolutely, unequivocally is a way to leave duality behind. And that's the second awakening. So the exoteric, the metaphor we use for the exoteric, is the outer circle of the temple. Now, anybody can come to a temple, attend a temple on a weekend and be like, wow, cool temple. I love Jesus, yada, yada. It's available to the public. Everyone has a right to it. Everyone can experience it. Now, the second level is the mesoteric. And the underlying belief in the mesoteric is oneness. There is no bad, there is no punishment, there is no evil. And as a result of there being no bad punishment or evil, judging others disappears, but also your need for control disappears. And considering that so much of that first spiritual awakening is about like how to manifest, AKA like how to control your destiny, it's important how to learn how to set high goals and work tirelessly to achieve them. But it's very different than being like, universe, please bring me this. I'm going to do these rituals, hope you like me well enough to do it. And if the manifesting doesn't work, we say, let me go find more ways to manifest better or more consistently. It doesn't actually work that way. When your manifesting tools stop working, it's a sign that you're ready to go to a higher level of consciousness, a level where you don't want to control. So to know this is one thing, but to really understand it will completely change your being. And that's awakening. That's enlightenment. It completely changed. To go from the exoteric to the mesoteric is awakening. This is your second significant spiritual awakening, and you will be here for a long time. Somebody has commented here that says spiritual bypassing. And just a note, spiritual bypassing is not a possibility. You might be seeing somebody, for example, not being willing to confront the death of someone because they're saying, well, they're always around and they're always around me. And it might seem like they're cutting the line in some way. Cutting the line is not possible. It's not possible to cut the line. Spiritual bypassing is not how spirituality works. And anybody that has tried to spiritual bypass and seen the way that it catches up with you very quick knows this. This is something that you can't trick the universe. Exactly. Everything is weighed, measured, and earned. There's no tricking the universe. So moving from the exoteric to the mesoteric is what the function of these sessions are all about. Now, the mesoteric, it's likened to the inner courtyard of the temple. So in the inner courtyard, there's monks and they're doing their meditations and everything. Now, you can't buy a robe off of Amazon and walk into the temple and sit down and start meditating. It doesn't work like that. And going into this second level, it's not for somebody that just wants to dabble, like to even be interested, to even find where can I go to enroll to get into the inner circle of the temple. You have to be the type of person that's very devoted to the practice, because historically, the only way you could get access is through renunciation, giving up everything in your life, only devoting to this path, shaving your head, releasing all of your belongings, the path of the renunciate. This used to be the only way that you could get access to teachings like this. So, in order to go from the outer circle of the temple into the inner circle of the temple, you need to be initiated. And initiated isn't being like, I now W night, it's not like that. It's just that all of the teachings of the second level are paradoxical. So, how can you be exerting effort and surrendering at the same time? How can you be ascended and grounded at the same time? How can you use your mind but lead with the heart? These aren't things that you can understand from a book. The function of a teacher is to answer your questions and to basically take the complex teachings that they really understand and just keep explaining them in new ways to you until you understand how this could fit your life. It has to be done with a living teacher. And I fought this for a really long time, but it's just, I didn't make the rules. I definitely tried to break them, but I didn't make the rules. This is just how it is. This is just how it's always been. And when people say, well, you could look up anything on the internet, of course, like you could have any answer on the internet, but it's the questions. It's the questions. Who are we? Why are we here? How high up is Earth in the chain of command? Do I matter? Is manifesting all there is? If I don't know what I want, why am I manifesting what I want? How do I know when it's time to effort? How do I know when it's time to surrender? Questions like these, they need to be given to you in a language that you can understand. Otherwise, the books all present as code. So you can read the Bible when you know what the code is, and you'll get a very different book than anything you've ever come across in religion. You'll realize that every single parable has massive meaning. And the teachings at the second level are given in parable and myth. So to give you a parable to illustrate this, Jesus told a parable about a farmer that sowed seeds. Who's here has heard this parable? Raise your hand. A farmer was sowing seeds, and some of the seeds fell on sandy soil, and some of the seeds fell on rocky soil, and some of the seeds fell on very fertile soil. So inside your mind, you have places that you've got your arms crossed, it's rocky soil, you don't want to receive information, you go, Osho, that's some weirdness, Rajneeshpuram, I gotta go, face tattoo, I gotta get. Can't receive information. Sometimes it falls on sandy soil. It's a part of you that's open, but is still not, you're not willing to water it. It has to be cultivated. It's not fertile. It's not gonna hit the same way. And then there's the fertile soil where everything that is planted can grow and flourish and serve with not so much effort from you. So a good prayer before we start any of these courses is, please let this fall on fertile soil. Let me be in a space of receiving here. Let me uncross my arms and come with an empty cup and be willing to be taught something that I don't know. Now, the parable doesn't end there, because then Jesus says, but then in the night, somebody came and sowed in on the fertile soil all kinds of weeds, all kinds of weeds. And they didn't know until it already started to sprout. And Jesus said to the farmer, don't go and pull out the weeds, because it will damage the roots that are already in the ground. First part of the parable is easy. Second part of the parable, a little more tricky. And what this means is that if you already have existing beliefs or existing practices that you're attached to, that you've been with for a long time, and maybe they're right for you, maybe they're wrong for you, maybe they're the weeds, maybe I'm the weeds, who knows? But if we go around pulling up everything, saying, no, we got to throw this away, this was wrong, this was bad, this was right, this was wrong, what we do is nothing ends up growing. So don't drop any of your practices because I've soared in and said, hey, try this instead. Practices are like malas. When they fall off, it's time for them to go. Let them grow. And then once they've grown up and you can see clearly, you can discern what's what, then you can pull out what doesn't serve you. No trusting, just testing. So if you think about all the time that the parables are told in churches and stuff, remembering that the churches are the exoteric. So everyone gets the Bible, but the meaning in the Bible, the meaning in the parables is this whole other world, this whole other world. I'm going to give you guys one more because I know a lot of you guys struggle with this. When Jesus says, honor thy father and thy mother, he's not talking about the fact that you have to have a perfect relationship with your parents or you're not spiritual. He says very clearly in the Essene Gospel of Peace, which is a direct, exactly what he gave to his students, not all like doctored up. He's talking about the heavenly father and the earthly mother, which is the paradox of being ascended and grounded at the same time, or using your mind and living from your heart. So the heavenly father is space. It's everything that you don't know about life. It's the great mystery. It's quantum time. It's the unknowable. And it is so important in your life to honor the unknowable, to always be reaching for more, to always be hungry for more, to never be what Jesus called rich in spirit, but to be constantly hungry for more, wanting more. That is honoring the Heavenly Father. But also, you need to honor the earthly mother. And the earthly mother is your body. It's this earth that you live on. It's this world that we're living in right here. It is the complex, tragic, and glorious human experience that is our life. We are not trying to like be aliens and transcend life and never so. We're here to navigate these limitations. We're here to love being a human. Nobody will ever be able to prove to you this happens after death. You might only have one go of this life. So enjoy it, enjoy it, enjoy it. And that's what it means to honor your father and your mother. Cool. So the mesoteric of the whole world and all of these things that you've like known but couldn't articulate start to make sense. This initiation has to happen from a living teacher because you just can't like read stuff like this in books. Once it's been opened up for you and people are like, it's all code, then you can go and start reading and being like, oh my God, code. And it's all cracking open. And you're like, oh my God, I love literally every religion because we're all talking about the same thing. Like, this is amazing. But there's a lot of moments like these, and this is what the function of a teacher is to help you understand. Cool. And then the final awakening is when you go from the mesoteric to the esoteric. Now, I haven't done this, can't speak on it. What I can say is I've been in the mesoteric for a while and I'm fucking loving it, baby. And I'm fucking loving it. So I'm very happy to be on this journey. I know what it's like to be really hungry for new teachings and being like, is this all we're talking about? Like fucking manifesting, like I want to know, I want to work miracles, I want to work actual legit miracles. I've seen unexplainable things happen. I don't want to make a fucking vision board. I want miracles. I want to devote myself to this path. I want to help alleviate the collective suffering of humanity. I don't want to just dabble and show up to the temple on the weekends like, bro, I want to live in here. Give me my robes, tell me what to do, and I'll do it. I'm ready. Took me a while to get to that point, but when I was ready, I was ready. And like Jesus says in the Beatitudes, blessed are they which hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Like, we'll fill your cup, but don't come to a buffet with a full plate. Don't be like Toby Maguire coming into the restaurant I used to work at with his little vegan peanut butter sandwich and asking us to put it on a plate for you. I can't feed you if you brought your little weird sandwich. So get rid of that. Come hungry, leave happy. The third awakening is when you go from the mesoteric to the esoteric. The analogy for the esoteric is the Holy of Holies, the Ark of the Covenant, where only the high priests can enter. Now, of course, you can work your way up to this level, but you got to stop trying to cut the line. You got to stop trying to be a unicorn. This is the biggest limitation to you getting more teaching, is being like, I already know this. I could look this up on the internet. How much fucking time you got? How much time you got to play the pride game with yourself? I had a lot of time. Going from the mesoteric to the esoteric, the teachings are not they don't use words for the teaching anymore. It's just symbols. So the interesting thing is, like, if you're passionate about teaching, when you're at the first level, you you teach with story. And so the Bible is a collection of different people's stories about God. It takes a long time. And that's okay. We all have to start here. Totally. It's very good. It's healthy. There's not a line you want to skip. There's a lot of really useful stuff that you learn in level 1 that you will take with you, even if it's just to use it paradoxically. So the second level of teachings, myth and parable, much shorter, small little teachings that pack a wallop. Third level of teachings, no word necessary. The teacher becomes a symbol, a living symbol. It's like those amazing like rishis and teachers and stuff in India where, you know, like Maharaji didn't even say anything to Ram Dass. He was just like actual love. And we were like, oh my God, like you don't even say anything to me, but you're just this symbol. You live on and you leave a symbol behind, kind of like, and all people have to do is look at the symbol. And if they keep contemplating the symbol, they will eventually reach enlightenment with no words. It's so fucking dope. The Tao Te Ching, the symbol of the yin yang. Gurdjieff, the symbol of the Enneagram. Jesus, the symbol of the cross. So these are so cool. And someone just mentioned here, you were meant to step into my life. Yes. I arrived in your life because of something you have inside of you called magnetic center. And magnetic center is something that builds up inside of you as a result of asking questions, not getting an answer you're satisfied with, and not letting the questions go. And they start to bother you. Why am I trying to manifest my life perfectly if every time I get what I manifest, it's a fucking shit show? Why? Why is it like this? Am I supposed to surrender or effort? Why, if God knows everything and sees everything, is there conflict on earth? Does God not see refugee children dying? Does God not see genocide? What these questions that no amount of outer level esoteric, oh, God has a plan, trust in God, oh, this works, oh, surrender more, make a better vision board, God might not like these people as much as it likes you, I don't know, and you're like, ugh, bitter in my mouth, ugh, like give me something I can chew on, give me something I can chew on. And so your future self, the part of you that has been through this many times before, sends you teachers. And sometimes these teachers, this is really common. I don't take offense of it at all, but definitely raise your hand if this happened to you with me. A lot of times the miracles you've been praying for are underneath the judgments you have of how you think it's got to look. So a lot of times when the teacher shows up, you're like, who the fuck are you? Fuck are you? That's why in parables they always have this analogy of like the God coming in the form of the beggar and like getting rejected. Totally fine to have that resistance. Totally fine to have that resistance. But as we go deeper into second level teachings, which is also where we learn about the true nature of desire, which brings us to the world of kink and all this whole different world. You learn that usually what you're the most like, oh, like I don't want a finger in my butt is usually like exactly groaning for a boning, you know what I mean? So usually the things we're very resistant towards are the things that we actually want. So those are the 3 levels of teachings. And this teaching that I'm teaching you here is one of many different mesoteric paths, but this is a lineage called the 4th way. So why is it called the 4th way? It's called the 4th way because typically there were 3 ways that you could reach enlightenment. The way of the fakir, the way of the monk, and the way of the yogi. So when you get to one that you feel like you might have been on, like raise your hand. So fakirs are not something that we're very familiar with in the West, but in India, they're very common. And a fakir is somebody that puts their body through very difficult situations. For example, holding their arm up over their head for their whole life, sleeping on a bed of nails, putting your body in physical discomfort so that you transcend the needs of the body, you turn the body off, and now you have extra energy to push yourself into enlightenment. You're taking let's say that we had 50 gallons of fuel in the body and that we need 150 gallons to awaken. And we have an empty tank up here. So we have 50 gallons in the body, we have 50 gallons in the mind, we have 50 gallons in the feelings, but then we have an empty tank. So we need to take 50 gallons from somewhere and push it into the empty tank, because when that empty tank is filled, we're enlightened, to put this in very coarse terms. So the fact here is like, I'm going to take my 50 gallons from the body. I'm going to completely just drain the body, no attachment to the body. And I am going to reach enlightenment this way. And they do, but they end up with a withered arm or sleeping for this one beautiful life on a bed of nails. Yes, they get enlightenment, but it cost them the body. So the second way is the path of the monk, the way of the monk. And the monk is like, okay, here's what I need to do. My desires, my feelings, this whole world, too much of a liability. I want my body so I can do the exact same thing every single day. And I want my mind so that I can contemplate scripture and become awakened that way. But anything that's going to trigger my desire, for example, living in a co-ed situation, a monk having a different outfit than me, having a good hair day, being exposed to things in the town that I might want, can't have that. So I'm going to take the 50 gallons out of desire and I'm going to push that into the empty tank and I'm going to achieve enlightenment that way. And they do. But at what cost? The only way that you can live is in like a religious jail, basically. And that's not to say everybody that reaches enlightenment is so happy to do it. You know, they don't know. They're like stoked about it. My arm withered, who cares? You know, I'm like, I'm over here. I'm on Mount Olympus, baby. I'm doing the thing. Monks the same, so fulfilled, but at the end of their one life they had, you know, all they knew was the monastery, was the abbey. And so the third path is the way of the yogi. And the yogi is like, look, desire, super necessary, super useful. Most important GPS that we have. We would never do more than the bare minimum if it wasn't desire. Desire is natural. People say, oh, well, isn't desire suffering? There's 3 levels of Buddhism. And in the exoteric, in the first level, you're definitely told that desire is, this is just, I don't think you're ever even told flat out that desire is bad. I just feel like so many people have developed this narrative that now people are just like, oh, desire. But the monk is like, desire is, the yogi's like, desire is very good and I need this. And also the body is really good and I need this. But the mind, the fucking troublesome mind that never shuts up. The mind never shuts up. It's always talking. It's always doing something. It's always, you know, like, so let me just get rid of the mind. And all of my practices are going to be around getting the mind to be quiet. Now, the mind is never quiet. The mind is not supposed to be quiet. And you really need the mind for a lot. It's very useful for a lot of things, for relating, for planning how you're going to teach workshops. The monk says, I'm going to take the 50 gallons out of the mind so that I can push it into the empty tank. And then I'm going to be enlightened that way. And they are. But when it comes to relating to other people, how they could also enlighten. You've got somebody that has a perfect body that is connected with the true nature of desire, but without their mind, they can't really help others. So it's just a personal achievement. It's just a personal achievement. And you get put on the same path. Say, okay, we'll keep meditating and maybe one day you'll enlighten like him. And then we start to get the narrative that enlightenment happens to certain people that are lucky because the people that it happened to by mind, by releasing the mind, they can't tell us. The fakir's got no interest in telling you how. The monk will be like, I'll tell you how, but you got to shave your head. You got to come and move into the abbey with me. You're like, I'm good. And the yogi doesn't have a mind to put this together. It's too much brain power. And they release that for enlightenment. Which brings us to the fourth way. If you guys have ever read the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, the first line of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali say, Atta Yoga Anustasanam. And that means, and in Sanskrit, and now the teachings of yoga. Now, a lot of us picked this up in our first yoga teacher training and immediately went on to the next stanzas about what it is. But just this first line, Atta Yoga Anustasanam. And now you come to the teachings. You've tried a lot of different things. You've tried going at it alone. You've tried spending tons of money on therapy, coaches. You've tried meditating. You've tried breath work. You've tried plant medicine. You've tried all of these other things. You've tried self-medicating, tried the fuck the pain away approach, and now you come to the teachings of yoga. And now we have the fourth way, and now you're ready for it. So if you feel like you're ready to receive more, I want you to just close your eyes with me and pray that this lands on fertile ground. We've all been brought into this space. It's an honor for me to be here. Please let me speak this message clearly, devoid of personality, devoid of the unnecessary. And may I transmit this gift the absolute best that it can be transmitted. That's me doing my part. The gift I can give, but receiving it, that's your prayer. That's your prayer. So let's go and take a look at what we have on our class list for today. Because I can really talk, you guys. I can really talk. Oh, we've got the whole class set up here. So, oh, perfect timing. So without getting too far ahead, the first, we just talked about the gift being given, but you have to receive it. Gift being given, but not received. In the wheel of enlightenment, and we'll go really deeply into this next lesson, as well as really deeply into what the Enneagram is and lesson 3. But the triangle points on an Enneagram, and this process of awakening we're doing is an Enneagram. It's a magical process. We have to do it step by step in the exact order that it's meant to. But the triangle symbolizes the 3 times we need to add a shock or a super effort to go from A to B. Who here has ever tried to go from A to B? I'm going to write a book. And you're like, okay, cool. That starts off easy. You're like, wow, this is going great. I got my writing outfit. I've told like my entire social circle that I'm writing a book. I've set up my perfect schedule. I've woken up at 5 a.m. I have my special writer's desk facing the wall because I heard only real writers face walls and not windows. And now I've sat down at my typewriter and I've got my special writing hands on and no words are coming. And no words are coming. We don't go from A to B. In order to make it from A to B, we have to bring in shocks at certain points. So we have to bring in shocks. And the first shock of life, so that we can get awakened and stay awakened. So we don't just want to get awakened, but we actually want to stay awakened. It's like getting a BBL. You can get a BBL, but you have to work to maintain it. The first shock that we need to begin our journey to enlightenment is the breath. And what this means is that every single person on earth, every single person, because animals don't have this function, but every single person that can breathe has the right to enlightenment, has an empty tank. Every single person on the whole earth, you were given this gift. You got the first shock that you need in order to awaken the moment you hit earth and started breathing. Now, breath can be given, but if it's not received, it's not working. So if somebody dies and I'm giving them CPR, which I've done, I can give them breath all I want, but if they're not receiving it, then nothing can be done. So as a metaphor for how teachings work, I'm going to give you guys psychological tests at the end of each and every lesson. But your results are a gift from your efforts. I can give you these tests, but you have to work them. If you don't receive and put this stuff to work, it's going to be feeding your personality where you're like, yeah, I did all of this, but you won't really be getting the results. So I want everyone to take a deep breath in, receiving the breath fully. Take a deep breath in. Ooh. Let's do this one more time. A deep breath in. Ooh. If we just focused on using our first conscious shock, on really receiving the breath that we are so delightfully given free of charge, if we were to just focus on this, we'd have very little problems. Our tension would melt away. We'd see new options. It's being given all the time, this gift of life, but so rarely do we receive it. But if you're breathing, you can awaken. And if somebody else is breathing, no matter how much you dislike them, that rise and fall in the chest is the presence of enlightenment, is the presence of creation, is the presence of goodness. So if they're breathing, good rule of thumb, if they're breathing, don't judge them. Make as many judgments as you want about them once they've died. That's why historical figures usually get walloped. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. The first thing that we're going to be talking about today is, who are we? Who are we? Where are we? And why are we here? So somebody just asked in the comments, why don't animals have this function? Well, humans, we are part of a large organism, which is called organic life on Earth. Organic life on Earth. Organic life on Earth, we're part of a system that includes trees, part of a system that includes animals, microorganisms, fungi, organic life on Earth. And organic life on Earth has a lifespan of 3.5 million years before it resets, typically. Now, in this cycle, we have 600,000 and a few decades, 600,000 years left of this cycle of organic life on Earth as far as the fourth way is concerned. Now I'm going to show you guys something on here. It's on my photos, so I have to make sure that I have this let me pull this up first and then I'll show you. And if you guys are on, I can try and turn my camera around for my friends on Instagram so you can see, but you can also feel free to attend this call on Zoom. And if anybody wants to help me out here, if I have anyone on here that works with me at my school, if you want to drop the link in the Instagram live, we have 170 people that would really like to be watching this as well. So it's been said that intelligence is knowing where you are. And so I'm going to show you what that is. So can everybody see this picture up here? This picture of the absolute, let me see if and what we have here is these numbers descending down. This is called, in the fourth way, the ray of creation. And this is the cosmology. This is in the fourth way, what they believe exists outside of us, where we are in the chain of command, etc. So again, the fourth way is a compilation of all world systems, all world knowledge. Basically, esoteric schools were built where they're like, look, this religion believes this, they have really good results. This religion believes this, they also have really good results. What are they all agreeing on? And let's just study that. So the first thing that we want to look at on here is the fact that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points. Now, this is an octave. An octave is do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do. And we count, the reason why it's 8 and not 7 is because in an octave, we usually count the same note twice. It begins with do and it ends in do. And all of the secrets of the universe, all of the mysteries of the universe can be explained either using math, can be explained using light and color, and it can also be explained using music. So you'll hear this term a lot as you start, kind of climbing up and being exposed to better, more arcane teachings, is an octave. Everything happens in an octave. We'll discuss this more specifically, the law of octaves, when we get to lesson 3. But all creations, all happenings, all abilities to go from point A to point B happen in an octave. It happens in 7 steps, every single one. Now, octave means 8. And again, we call it an octave because we're counting that first note twice. So it used to be that music, every time you heard chanting or hymns or anything like that, it was invoking the laws of the universe. It was a code. Anybody could come to the church and hear the choir. Anyone could come to the church and hear the choir. But for people who had ears to hear, for people who had been initiated, they were listening in the music to the fundamental law of the universe, the fundamental laws of creation. It was a musical code. So the solfege, which is where we get do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do from, the solfege, these are short terms. They mean something. Each note actually means something about who we are and where we are and why we're here. Now, people have really had a hard time with the fact that I say C-do and not T-do, because the movie The Sound of Music had a huge impact on our relationship to the solfege. This is the original Latin version where we say C-do and not T-do. So I know tea is a drink with jam and bread, but we're talking about something slightly different here. So all of creation from the top, from the microcosm, all the way up to the macrocosm, has this urge called the duplicating principle. I'm going to stop my shirt because we're going to talk about this for a second. It's called the duplicating principle, and it is the desire for something to replicate itself. So humans want to procreate. Teachers want to create students that can continue on the teaching. Plants leave seeds. For all creation, from the macrocosm to the microcosm, there is this urge to duplicate oneself, to not let the cycle end with you, but to continue pushing creativity and creation forward. The universe is constantly expanding because it's constantly making love to and reproducing itself endlessly, outwards and outwards. And that's a bit of a tantric philosophy. If you're like, oh, how does that work exactly? We can really split apart some other teachings in here, but that tantric, everything is fucking itself philosophy, we'll do that one another day. But the urge to duplicate is in all teachers, it's in all systems, it's in all humans. And for some people, they're like, I choose not to do this for this life. That's fine. The gift is given, it's not received. I'm not saying that you have to procreate to be a good human, but this is what makes things grow, is the urge to duplicate. So there's a law, this seems like a good time to say it for everybody that's passionate about healing and teaching and helping others. There's a law in spirituality that says you cannot go to the next level unless you put a student, at least one student, on the level that you're currently at. This is the duplicating principle in action. So if I'm like, I want to go to the third level of spirituality, the only way that I can do that is to bring students to the second level and make sure they get it and make sure I'm not leaving that level abandoned with a vacancy where I used to be. You can only master something by teaching it. And in order to go forward, you have to help at least one person get to the level that you're at. Because when you teach something, it's mastered. When you articulate it, you realize, wow, I did know this. When you don't articulate it, or when you try to and the words don't come, you realize, ooh, there's something here. There's something here that actually needs to be mastered. There's something here that needs to be done. So many people know but can't articulate. Articulating and teaching others is the art of self-graduation. I am a person. I'm not a community person. I don't like festivals. I grew up in a commune. I don't like tribes. Like, this is not my way at all. So I teach tools for self-initiates, for people that want to be able to graduate themselves over and over and over again, that want to do it themselves, that are willing to put in the work. If you're a self-initiate, you don't blame other people for your lack of progress. Anytime you're not getting the result you want, you're like, I take responsibility for this. Wherever there's responsibility, there's power. Yes, I want to do this. Yes, I take this. But you have to put somebody, this is the duplicating principle as it relates to teaching. You have to put somebody else at the level you're at if you want to go to the next level. So now that we understand what the duplicating principle is, we can go back over this way of creation. So all creation We're going to start with where are we, and that'll help us explain who are we. All creation began at the note do, at the note do. And the reason why, as we talk about this, we're working our way down, not going do, re, mi upwards, but do, si, la, is that for this illustration, everything came down from God, descended from God, or the absolute, or the unknowable. Our journey as humans is to try to climb back up the ladder to get as close to God as we can, because the closer to God that we get, the less laws we live under, and I'll explain exactly what laws are here. So everything began with the absolute, and the absolute is the note do. So you guys can see right here on this chart, I'm just going to turn this around for my people on here. Can you guys see? You guys might not be able to see super well, but I will try for you anyway. Okay, sorry, my friends. I got to do this in a way where we can all participate. We'll do our best. Okay, so it all began at the note do. And as we see here, the note do is short for domina. Domina. And domina means God. God. Now, this one here, God had one law. Now, where there is one law, there are no limitations. So what does something that have the one thing that has everything is lacking one thing? If you have everything, you don't have any limitations. There's no tension. There's no way that you can measure growth, because you can't measure growth without limitations. If I was trying to inflate a balloon, but the balloon didn't have a barrier, I couldn't see that every breath I was pumping into the balloon was actually growing it. I'm just trying to make things happen. So there can't be growth without limitations. So when there was only one law, the absolute said, I am going to split myself. And this is the only time in the ray of create, the fundamental law of one is that to be one force, you have to have three sides: an active side, a passive side, and a neutral side. In order for tension to occur, in order for growth to be possible, the absolute, duplicated itself. And when it duplicated itself, it became three. This is the only time in the ray of creation that this happened. Now, this is articulated in the Trimurti in Hinduism. Also, the Tridevi is the feminine aspect. The Holy Trinity, this concept of like Father, Son, Holy Ghost. What this is saying, what this is pointing at, is that God, oneness, goodness, love, has three faces. Sometimes that face, to use the Hindu, the Trimurti, sometimes that face is creating, and that's Brahma in the Trimurti. Brahma, creating, loving, let's make stuff. Sometimes that's what God looks like. Sometimes the face of God is destroying or passive. Active, creating, passive, destroying. And that's the god Shiva. For balance to occur in life, balance is not two, balance is three. A triangle distributes weight equally. So sometimes God is creating, Brahma. Sometimes God is destroying, Shiva. And sometimes God is neutralizing, Vishnu. Now, when we're stuck in the game of religion, this is why so few people awakening. When things are going good, you're like, that's God on my side, baby. And then you don't get your way. You go, there's a devil at work here. There's a devil at work here. This is so wrong. And you don't see a third force. You're like, God, devil, God, devil. When things don't go your way, God is still at work, because sometimes God is destroying. When things go your way, sometimes that's, I'm sorry, not sometimes. When things go your way, that's also God at work. And when things go away that you were not expecting whatsoever, game changer, that is God at work. So when you understand that to understand God, to understand the concept of God, you have to know that God has three sides. When you know the three faces of God, you see the face of God in all things. What would your life look like if you saw the face of God in all things? What would your life look like if in every conflict you saw the face of God? The Enneagram, this symbol is called the face of God. So the one, domina, split itself into three so that tension could be present, so that things could grow. Active, sperm; passive, egg; neutral, womb. If we have an active symbol, a passive symbol, and a neutralizing symbol, we can create anything. In order to create anything, like Tesla said, if you know the magic of the 3, the 6, and the 9, the 3, the 6, and the 9, you have the key to the universe. This is how you can create anything, because the fundamental law of creation was that you need three forces. So the one, domina, became 3, the note C. Now, C is short for sidereus orbi. And we know this word sidereus from like sidereal astronomy or astrology. My astrologist friends say that astronomy is not astrology and they won't recognize sidereal as being real. But that's another conversation for another day. On the ray of creation, we see that this sidereus orbi corresponds with this place on here called all worlds. So this is all possible worlds, unobservable universe, all possible worlds, all possible galaxies, all possible organisms, all possible things. This is the note C on the octave. Now, in this realm, there are only 3 laws. This is kind of like only having to ask 3 people for permission to do what you want to do. If we scroll down, we see that here we are, Earth, with 48 laws. That's a lot of people to ask. We'll get there. But in this world, in the note C, all worlds, there's only, if you get 3 people, an active person, a passive person, and a neutralizing person to sign off on your plan, you can create anything. Manifestation can happen with just 3 pieces of clearance. Now, these 3 laws will come with us. These are laws that we live under here on Earth. These 3 laws will be applicable to all levels on the ray of creation, from the microcosm to the macrocosm. Everything that is not the absolute God has to abide by this threefold principle: active, passive, and neutralizing. You want to create anything? Try and find out what's the active, passive, and neutralizing principle here. Like a light bulb. We have the bulb where it takes place. That's neutral. That's what brings the 2 forces together beneath it. We have the filament, which is passive. It's receiving the electrical charge. And then we have the electrical charge itself. Active, passive, neutralizing. If you can identify these components in all things, you can create anything. And if you can identify the 3 forces anytime you're in a state of conflict, literally anytime. For example, you're like, Palestine and Israel, what's going on here? Well, where are Palestine and Israel fighting? They're fighting on Earth. They're fighting on Earth. And on Earth, mixtus orbi, there is conflict. This is just a part of what it is. There's no controlling that. That's just what it is. When we get down to the mixtus orbi, that'll make a bit more sense. So the note C was like, cool, I love being all worlds, but now I want to duplicate myself. I have a duplicating urge. So I am going to birth or duplicate a new realm. And this realm is going to have my 3 laws plus 3 of its own. And this became the note La. So La is short for lacteus orbi. And lacteus orbi, anyone that's a vegan knows lacteus, milk, Milky Way. Milky Way is the world of all suns. So all suns is different from all worlds, but it's all the different solar systems that exist within our galaxy. Lacteus orbi. Everything in the lacteus orbi has 6 laws. 3 that came from all the way from the top, and 3 of its own. Lacteus Orbi was like, I love this all sons life. I love these 6 laws, but now I have the urge to duplicate myself. So the note lot duplicated itself and created the new note, which is called soul. Soul means sun. The sun has 6 laws that came from the note above, and 3 of those laws came from the note above, and 6 laws of its own. So it just duplicates from 3 laws to 6 laws, from 6 laws to 12 laws. The sun was like, I'm loving this life, 12 laws, sick. I want to duplicate myself. The note soul gave birth to the note fa. The note fa represents all of the planets that revolve around the sun. 12 laws from the sun, 12 laws of its own. And this is the note fa. And fa is short for fatum. Fatum. Now, all the planets have 24 laws. Now, why are the planets called fate? Because our planets determine our fate. The function of humanity is to translate planetary influences and send them to the note below so that it can duplicate. All planets want to duplicate themselves. All of these worlds want to duplicate themselves so they can go up higher. The Earth wants to be a planet one day. The planet wants to be the sun one day. The sun wants to be an all sun. But in order for them to go higher, they have to put someone at the level they're at. The moon becomes an Earth one day. The Earth becomes a planet one day. The planet becomes a sun one day. So everyone's trying to climb higher to God, from the microcosm to the macrocosm. Now, the planets determine our fate. So for example, when, let's say, 2 planets are crossing, imagine you're walking down the street and some random person comes up and starts walking really close to you, and you start going, oh, get away from here, making yourself small. You're creating tension, you're getting weird. Or you're being like, what? Jupiter being like, what? Mars, you want to go? When planets do this, when planets get too close to each other, it creates big waves of tension on Earth. And that's why we have wars. That's why we have wars. We have Israel, we have Palestine happening on Earth. Earth is not on the level of the planets. Earth translates planetary influences. Sometimes God creates, sometimes God destroys, sometimes God is neutral. This is just what it is. But there's actually no controlling it. Wars have existed for as long as humankind has been around. And it's never been great. Really, the only way that you can kind of, if you really struggle with war, then I recommend really getting into the Bhagavad Gita, and really, because it's all about someone with struggle, Arjuna struggling with being a warrior and the destructive face of God. And it's a wonderful book, but we all know it from Oppenheimer now, you know? So 24 laws for the planets. Planets were like, loving this, let's have a baby, let's duplicate ourselves. 24 fog gave birth to the note me, which is Earth. By the time we are down at Earth, relatively low on the chain of command, we have 48 laws. Earth is a wonderful place to be, but you have 48 laws, 48 people that have to sign off on your mission before anything can happen. 24 laws from the planets, 24 laws on Earth. And Earth is the note me. And me is short for mixtus orbi. This means the mixed rule. Humans incarnate on Earth. It is one of these 48 laws. We incarnate on Earth to play the mixed rule of good and evil. On Earth, this mixed rule of good and evil is the theme. In Tantra, they say the one became two for the joy of returning to one again. We incarnate to experience this duality, the pain of fearing punishment and seeking reward, learning the futility of all of it so that we can wake up and get out of this law. But every single human being on Earth comes to Earth to play this game of good, bad, right, wrong. Good, bad, right, wrong. And I think that there's no bigger game of duality than politics. I want to make a note here because A lot of people are like, well, what about social justice warriors? Social justice warriors are very necessary in humanity, very necessary for humanity. And social justice warriors are probably going to be super satisfied by like dabbling in spirituality, but really getting down with like politics and stuff like that. The way of the social justice warrior is different than the way of the seeker. And the way of the seeker, there's no getting around this. I understand that this can be hard to accept, but I've tried to fight this. I very fucking publicly embarrassed myself for a long time, got completely psyoped, descended in consciousness. Under no circumstances whatsoever is the battle of us versus them, or the battle of good, bad, right, or wrong. This is never, and I repeat, never the truth of existence. Under no circumstances, no matter how appetizing the fight might seem. And you'll be told by people you have to get involved or you don't care. This is not. Just because they said it doesn't mean it's true. You might have to experience this for yourself, but ultimately, on the spiritual path, you're the observer. Sometimes God is creating. Sometimes God is destroying. Sometimes God is neutralizing. I'm going to observe without judgment. When you realize how hard it is to observe without judgment, you'll realize where the work is. It doesn't feel like, oh, so relaxed. It's hard. It's hard to not want to control things. So mixtus orbi, the note me. Humans have 48 laws. Now beneath us, the note Re. Earth says we want to duplicate ourselves. Earth duplicated itself and became the note Re, Regina Astri. Regina Astri means queen star. Regina, queen, Astri, star. And the moon has 96 laws. Now, if you're living under 96 laws, you have the amount of rights as a mineral. You have as much agency as like a rock would. Who here has seen the Extremely Everything Loud at the Everything Same Time? That really cool movie that I don't know what it's called, but that rock scene, such a fucking sick scene. But that's what it feels, that existence. What's the movie called? I'm like extremely loud and incredibly close, modifying it. You have as much rights as a mineral. And it would be so nice. I'll give you guys very clear drug examples of what each of these, what it feels like to be under laws like this. But it would be so nice if we were on Earth and we were just living under 48 laws usually. The thing is that we have a tendency to impose on ourselves more laws than necessary. I'll give you a really clear example. I went to the DMV. This was the last time that I noticed that this happened. And now I'm so like hyper aware. Well, actually it happened to me at the dentist the other day. I noticed my little legs were shaking because I get scared at the dentist and they drilled my tooth a lot. But I was at the DMV. I lived like very far away from the DMV. And I had gotten all of my paperwork in order and I had gone to get like a new ID. And it was I had a brand new baby. My ID was expired. My passport was expiring. Like I had to get it done, but it was like a fucking 3-hour drive to get to the DMV. And when I got there, the lady told me that I had to have mail with like my street address on it. I had my postage box, but in New Mexico, so many people live remote and you can't get mail delivered to your actual house. It has to be to a postage box. And she was telling me that there was no way that I could get an ID, and I couldn't see any way that I could get the qualifications. And I noticed that my hand had clenched. I could only see one way forward, and that was to like unleash the Karen. I could only see one way. I had one option. I wasn't a human with 48 laws and lots of freedom. If I take a human and I put them in prison and I say, now you have more laws than a free person, they can't do anything. But I was under self-imposed laws. My hands were shaking, my little fucking clenched fists. All I could think about was like anger and luckily I remembered myself in that moment and was like, holy shit, I'm under a lot of laws here. And I managed to walk away. I was so shocked at the degree to which I had disabled myself that luckily I didn't like turn up the Karen, but I was like, whoa. So a lot of times we put ourselves under way more laws than are even a requirement. And when that happens, we descend to like moon conditions, moon conditions. So we don't want that. So our whole goal of doing work in this method is to try to live under less laws. And everyone is always like, oh, you know, what's the 48 laws? Like, how do I know these 48 laws? If I told you the 48 laws, assuming that I knew them, they're it's not really written down in a place what all the 48 laws are. What is recommended in the fourth way is to just contemplate 3 laws really, really well. The law of 3, the law of octaves, and the law of time. Really focus on these 3 laws, because if you just focus on these ones, and if you just focus on these ones, one of those being the law that comes all the way up from the top, it'll put you on the right path. But it's so much better to master master 3 than to try and just know them all and say, oh, okay, cool, I know all the 48 laws now. You know, it's like, it has nothing to do with the 48 laws of power, but think of how many people, you know, have read the book, The 48 Laws of Power, and aren't applying all of these all the time. Think about all of the laws that you learn from like your human design strategy, but you can only really comprehend one at a time. It's a lot better to just focus on the on mastering a few of them, because it'll set the other ones right. So our whole goal, this is the work that we do in the fourth way, the work that we do in regards to like wanting to achieve enlightenment, is specifically to get out from less laws. So like one of the first laws that you'll get out from under is one called the law of accident, which basically just means that like things happen to you in your life over and over again. Now, if somebody becomes conscious and gets themselves out from the law of accident, let's use this analogy. We've got a man rushing through the airport. There's long lines at security. He's like rushing to get through the TSA. He finally gets through. Someone bumps into him. Coffee spills all over him. He's like, leave it. I'm going to leave my plane. He's running to the gate with coffee spilled all over himself. Cup is still sitting in the thing. People are shocked around him, being like, what's going on with this person? He makes it on the plane. They take off and then crashes and he dies. Somebody that is not living under the law of accident might show up, see that there's a very long line on the TSA, and say, I'm not going to be somebody that's pushing and shoving. God is time. I understand the law of time. I'm going to be peaceful here. And certainly by the time the coffee spilled, they would be like, this is a universal signal to slow the fuck down. He gets to his gate, the plane has taken off, he misses the flight, and everyone says, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. So what are miracles? Whenever we demonstrate on earth 48 laws, something that requires less laws, people call it a miracle. If that person was living under 47 laws, he had only gotten out of one law, the law of accident. He now has 47 governing laws instead of 48. The fact that he missed that plane, people would say that's a miracle. So that's just the work that we're doing. We want to climb out from less laws. So what does it feel like to be under laws? Let's do a little drug tour here. 96 laws. 96 laws feels like a mineral. And to me, I know that this is different for everybody, but I guess it wasn't ketamine because I was swirling around on that. But if you can think of any trip that you've ever had, sometimes it's on alcohol, or like maybe the first time you smoked weed and you're paranoid and you can't get off the couch. You guys, nothing's fucked me up more than weed. I swear to God, getting to it, like, oh my God. Level 3, when I get really fucked up on weed, like edibles, it always happens in 3. This happened to me like 3 times. And I just want to preface this by saying, like, I've never shit myself in my life. But when I'm really fucked up on edibles, I usually think, oh my God, I shit my pants. That's like level 1. Oh, I shit my pants. I can feel it. Level 2 is like, I shit my pants. I can smell it. I can feel it. That's level 2. That's not even that bad. Level 3, full 96 laws. I'm pinned to the couch. I've shit my pants. I can feel it. I can smell it. And other people in the room are looking at me trying to figure out what the smell is. And that's the fucking 96 laws world that I'm in when I'm pinned to the couch, trapped in my own mind, and very, very concerned. Very, very concerned that I shit my pants and other people are aware from it. So that's how I would describe 96 laws. Now, 48 laws on earth, what it feels like to be under 48 laws is like waking up after a really good night's sleep. So when you wake up rested, this is what it feels like to be under 48 laws. You wake up rested, you say, oh my God, I slept so good. What do you want to do today? The world is our oyster. Like, this is what living to our rights on earth should feel like. And for me, in the past, I only used it when I was smoking a lot of weed because that was just my way for a while. I haven't smoked weed in 2 years, almost to the day. But I used to feel like smoking weed regularly, like put me at that 48 laws all the time. I used to feel that way. That even if I was having a shitty day, that I could smoke weed and feel that like, what do you want to do today? Like, I don't know, what do you want to do today? So for me, that's what weed felt like for a while. Now, all planets, 24 laws. What does it feel like to be a planet? What does it feel like to be under only 24 laws? Cocaine, baby. Cocaine, baby. Not come down cocaine, but when you're like, whoa, what do you guys want to do? We can do anything we want to do. Let's do it. Let's make this happen right now. Oh my God, we can make anything. And there's just, you don't have these additional 48 laws that are like, maybe this wouldn't be possible. Maybe we need to get clearance. Maybe it's not the best idea to carry a, discarded Persian rug all the way back across the Williamsburg Bridge to our apartment at 4 o'clock in the morning. Like, there's none of that. You're just like, onwards, like, let's do it. That's what it feels like to be under 24 laws. To be under 12 laws. Now, this is the least amount of laws that we as humans can live under. There's a minimum amount of laws that we can live under. Very few, they say that Christ was 6 laws. That I've heard be up for debate, but something I haven't heard be up for debate is that 12 laws. If we get to 12 laws above us, that's like full enlightenment, symbolic realm, good to go. 12 laws to me, because I haven't done heroin, but from what I've heard, that would be 6. To me, 12 laws feels like mushrooms, like right when the mushrooms are first coming up and you see the like interconnectedness of all things and you're like silly and goofy and you're like, what is that? Oh, look at this thing over here, and you're curious like a little baby, and everything is like shimmering and together, and you just see how everything works together to make things go. That's how I would describe 12 laws. And you have really big realizations and stuff. It's like, because your mind is so fresh, like a little baby, not pounded down from too many laws on top of you, like everything kind of unfolds and reveals itself in a really beautiful way. I've had that experience many a time. The thing about drugs is that they can get you to these worlds, but they can't get you back. So I'm not talking about like, people are like, oh, well, I have direct contact with God every time I take ayahuasca. That's not your realization. That's just what happens to you when you're high on that plant. And that's totally fine. It can be really useful, but we're talking about not going to a place and coming back. We're talking about moving into a new level of consciousness so that you're on mushrooms when you're washing the dishes. When you don't get your way, specifically when you don't get your way, you're like, ooh, I love this. Finally, 6 laws is what I imagine heroin feels like for the first time. Just the hug your mom never gave you, returning to that oneness, returning to the feeling of what it's like to be totally safe, totally protected, that everything is handled for you, that you can just completely surrender and go with that flow while being overwhelmed with like a sense of everlasting and complete love. Kind of like the peak of an orgasm, the first time you're having sex with somebody that you're super, super in love with. Like that moment of just being completely enraptured in this like pristine moment of the first time you're ever hooking up with someone that you're super in love with, and it's great. And all things are well in that world. For that moment, imagine being able to live there full time. That's the goal. So why are humans capable of consciousness and animals aren't? Because it's pretty fucking special to be a human. But when we talked about how nothing goes from A to B, that a shock is required, we'll talk more about this in lesson 3. But I want to leave a little bit of space for questions. A shock is always required between the notes mi and fa, or si and do. On the Enneagram, that's between this and this, mi, fa, si, do over here. So I'm sorry, si, do. So because Earth is the note mi and all planets are the note fa, and this ray of creation would not continue to duplicate itself. After the moon, it keeps duplicating itself on and on into infinity, on and on into infinity, more and more and more. So the moon has a new, 96 to 182 or whatever that is, just all the way down. It just keeps going down infinitely, but by octaves and by duplicating over and over. So because a shock is required, because this couldn't go A to B without a shock, there's a shock here in between C and Do, and there's a shock here in between mi and fa. And humanity is the shock between Earth and the planets. This is the factor. Humanity, organic life on Earth, is the factor that had to be brought in to make sure that this could continue. There needed to be something by law that could translate the planetary influences and send them down the line. Earth was not capable of doing this on its own, so humanity was brought in. And because this is who we are and what we are, that's why we have a chance to awaken. So even if you read like really old, like the Sumerian texts and stuff about like Enki, the fish god, or what life was like for humans before they became conscious, basically just livestock that were here to just to basically toil and suffer through planetary conditions to translate those influences and send them to the moon so that things could keep ascending. They talk about concept of Christ or enlightenment or consciousness as being this gift that was given to humans so that you wouldn't just have to suffer unnecessarily with no agency in your life, that you had this little flame inside of you, that if you decided that you wanted more, that you were really hungry and thirsty for more, that you weren't content with just living the way that you've been living up until this point, but that you really wanted to do something different, that you could fan this little flame and that it could grow and that you could ascend, and that if you did the right work, you really could get yourself out of this mess. And the fourth way, it's also worth noting that they believe in recurrence and not reincarnation. And so at the end of this life, you just are born the same day, same parents, same conditions over and over again, like Westworld. And when you don't have that flame of consciousness burning and growing, you don't pick up where you left off. You just reset over and over and over again with no memory that you've just done this before and that your past is like what's ahead of you. But this fire of consciousness is something that can never be taken away from you. So when I say to you, study until there's a force in you that nothing can destroy, I mean, nothing can destroy this work of consciousness that you do here. Everything else will be stripped and taken away from you without a doubt. But this flame of consciousness will never be taken away from you. And when you graduate out of this, you get a new option where you don't have to keep incarnating into this slop over and over again. Look at your scars. Imagine that you've gotten these every time. Think about your reaction to world conflict right now. What if I told you that this Gaza thing gets you every single time? It's not a very happy existence, but the fourth way is this is not love and light, you guys, because nature can't even handle 24 hours of light. Do I believe that? It doesn't matter what I believe. It doesn't matter what I believe. It doesn't. And truthfully, when I was first teaching, I wanted to teach all about the mysteries of like God and the mysteries of what was out there. Now I'm really into just teaching about life. Like, how can we enjoy life more? And for me, understanding that I can enter a world where true surrender is actually possible. And what comes as a result of true surrender is that I don't have to worry about doing things right. I don't have to worry about doing things fast. I don't have to worry about where I need to go or what I need to be. And for some people that have just always been naturally present their whole life, this might not seem like an achievement to you. but I've spent basically my whole life worrying. I've spent basically my whole life trying to do things right. My life was super fucking painful and it wouldn't stop being painful. And I really wanted to not experience that. I had heard, I'd seen miracles, I had seen unexplainable things, I'd seen people transcend, I saw people with peace. I saw people that weren't like thrashing against the flow. I just didn't know how to do it. And no matter how much I meditated, it wasn't getting me results. No matter how much I did Kundalini yoga, it wasn't getting me results. No matter how many books I read, it wasn't getting me results. But then I started doing the type of work, the fourth way, which is called the way of the sly one. It's a sneaky way. You can awaken while keeping your mind, your body, and your desires, but you're going to have to take a very hard look at what the reality of this combination of your mind, your body, and your desires actually looks like. And it doesn't look as spiritual as you think it does. It's horrifying, to be honest. But when you realize that, like, you aren't the person that you think you are, and what you hate most in the world is usually the stuff that looks and behaves just like you, then you can change. And when you change, or not just change, when you transform, when you become a different person because you've seen the reality of who you are and you really, really want to awaken, you have opportunities in life that were never presented to you before. You're living under less laws. You don't have to worry that all the stars need to align perfectly for you to get what you want. You just you do your duty for the sake of doing it great. And things that are so much better than you could have ever manifested start to show up at your doorstep. Like things so much better than you could have ever planned for yourself show up at your doorstep, and you realize, man, all these things I thought I wanted were so wrong for me. You can be initiated into this flow that you realize has been moving all the time, that the same thing that makes the Milky Way spin and the way that it spins is a flow that's passing through your life. And due to your own just not knowing it was there, or not knowing how to be a part of it, or fear, or thinking that you were already there, that you've been like outside of something that really wanted to take you for a ride, but for whatever reason, you just couldn't let the universe twirl you in that way. And for really good reasons, you know, you were hurt, you were scared, you didn't get results, you didn't know how, you weren't educated, you didn't know that this was a thing, like so many reasons. But there's this poem by Rilke, and I used to be like a full-on nihilist, like no God whatsoever, very, wouldn't look at the stars, wouldn't look at grains of things, nothing that could lead to any type of quantum thinking, like who are we, why are we here, what is life. I just wouldn't let myself go there because I was so afraid of becoming too devoted by something, and joining a cult like my parents did, that like it really hurt. It really hurt to be the child of parents that made those choices. And I came across this poem. So it was given to me, and I didn't understand like what it meant. So I would just recite it to myself when I was running. I was running over the bridges a lot in the city at the time. And it was a poem by Rainer Maria Rilke. And he said, I live my life in widening circles that reach out across the earth. And I don't know if I'll complete this last one, but I give myself to it. I have been circling around God, the primordial tower. I have been circling for thousands of years, and still I don't know. Am I a falcon? Am I a storm? Or am I a great song? My son's name is Reiner. What this poem means to me, I didn't know what it meant, but I would just chant it to myself over and over again. I am part of a very big system. I am a very small, but to me, very meaningful piece of existence. And now that I realize how small I am in the chain of command, now that I realize, like, I don't even know if I'm going to complete this last circle of my life that I've been going around and around. I don't even know if I'm going to complete this, but I surrender to it. I surrender to the flow that is my life, because now I know this whole time I've been circling around God. That's the constant. God is so big, so great, so massive. I'm done even theorizing about what that is. I don't need to have a personal, like, I used to have like a boyfriend girlfriend relationship with God, like, oh, you like me, right? Oh, you're so cool. Oh, I know this thing about you. Oh, did I check in today? Sorry, I didn't text you. This very like human relationship with something so massive. But now that I know what it is that I've been circling around, like I don't need to know that anymore. I've been circling around God, the primordial tower, and I've been doing it for thousands of years. So now I get to answer this question for me. Who am I? Am I a falcon? I know what God is now. So am I a falcon? Am I a storm? Or am I a great song? This is the journey of life that I'm on, where I get to do what it is that I love so much, which is study really complicated things that cost a lot of money and then just like radically tear down the gates. And I mean, like, this needs to be available for more people. So I'm going to give you guys one piece of homework and then we'll do and then I can stay later for Q&A. I don't mind doing a 2-hour session, but I don't want to keep you learning for longer than 90 minutes. So if we have questions, we'll do them here. But psychological tests. I'm giving this to you, but receiving it is going to be on you. The biggest block to consciousness is believing that you're already there. Believing that you're already there. So in order to be able to be taught, you have to really want to wake up. And the best way or the most jarring way to do this is I want you to commit to observing yourself for this next week. And what I want you to observe in yourself is if it's possible for you to even go 1 week without telling a lie, to even go 1 week. You're spiritual, right? You're spiritual, you're awakened. Shouldn't be hard, right? Shouldn't be hard. Just do this little thing. Just do this little thing and see if you can do it. No lying to your boss, no lying to your children, no white lies, no black lies, no embellishments, no telling stories that aren't yours. Just the truth. Just the truth. No fluff. Can you not tell a lie for 7 days? Scorpio, stellium, and all. Can you not tell a lie for 7 days? Because if you can't tell a lie for 7 days, we got some fucking work to do. And that's okay. When we become poor in spirit saying, oh my God, I've got some work to do, we'll get everything that we want. But when we're rich in spirit, when we're walking around being like, I'm already awakened, I don't even need to try this lying homework because I already know I always tell the truth. In every situation, I tell the truth. No, I even caught myself lying the other day because I just started this homework, but this guy was like, he said I'd been on the pacifier too long. And I was like, no, I just breastfed until I was 13 years old, which is a fucking bold-faced lie. And I know, fine, okay, it's funny. I'm not saying that it's bad to lie. It's just that we consider ourselves to be very honest, very spiritual, very holy. We're so good, right? Like, and when you realize that you can't even meet this super basic requirement of not telling a lie, it's like, cool. Sarcasm isn't the truth. Yeah. They say that Jesus never laughed. Like, laughing is your mind trying to comprehend if something is like a yes or a no. People, like scientists were for the longest time couldn't figure out, why do people laugh? It's so weird. It's like involuntary. You're shaking, you're making like a weird noise. And the fourth way to explain it, like, it's just anything else, but it's your mind trying to comprehend if something is a yes or a no. So it's like somebody slipping and eating shit on the ice. You're like, oh my God, no, that's so wrong. Oh my God, yes, that's so funny. Like, and comedy is such a good thing to watch as well if you're struggling with the conflict, because comedians will always take a stab at it. It's like the best news to watch, I think. But that it's your body trying to categorize something. Is this a yes for me or is this a no? And you will laugh until you can file it away safely in your mind. That was funny. So if you're into advertising, using humor in ads will create a lot of replays in the person's mind. But they say that Jesus never laughed, which is probably why he only had 12 followers. But but Jesus was in integrity. There was nothing that was on the edge. Is this a yes or a no for that? Cool. So now we can do some questions. Go ahead. I'm going to be taking questions from Zoom today. We'll be doing questions here for the next 25 minutes. So just go ahead, and you need to have your camera on, but if you could raise your physical hand so I can see you. Livia, please go ahead.
Hi. Thank you. I've been studying with you for this past few months, and it's been amazing. I highly recommend to everybody. Yes, I'm
Thanks.
so excited. And the way I came to you was really through having a vision of initiation. And then I just started like questioning initiation. What is this? I've heard this word before, but it never really clicked. And
Mhm.
so once it clicked and I saw your website and I was like, fuck, who the fuck is this person? I was like, oh my God, no. Okay. And I'm all love and light, and you were like all dark and red and stuff. So this was really, really cool. And I'm so glad to have known you. You're my teacher. I'm very honored to be here. And last night I was like studying and meditating and just reading. And I have these books here of alchemy and mysticism. So I started really like reading through them. And like you say, we start developing this awareness beyond symbols. And I had this book for 3 years and I never got anything of it. But I got something yesterday, which was like Magnus Opus.
Mhm.
And I would love to hear your intake. And if it's from a lesson from far away, let us know. But I'm very curious about it right now.
What's a magnum opus?
Yeah, like because there is the rubedo, whatever, negredo of
Mhm.
alchemy. And because I'm also, I think, writing a book about alchemy, like how to alchemize my pain into poetry. This is coming up because it's alchemy. I'm like, what is alchemy? What is it? What is the whole
Mhm. Mhm.
thing? Magnus Opus.
Got it. Thank you for your question. I love this question. So alchemy, super cool lineage, and I'm not like the most versed in it, just the basics. But alchemy is the process of turning lead into gold, or from taking to go all the way through the octave, from the bottom dough to the top dough. And I believe now, look, there's people, I know a lot of people that know more about alchemy than I do. Twitchy Witch is a good example of somebody that teaches a lot about alchemy. This isn't what I know the most of, but what I know from my studies is, and just from the way that we use magnum opus, is like, this is your great achievement. This is your big, this is like, I think a opus in music is, it's like your greatest achievement. If somebody's working on their magnum opus, this is like the big result from your alchemical turnover, not like a little one where it's like, oh, when I went from my 20s into my 30s, I had, this awakening, but really like the transformation that took you from a piece of lead. And you can't transform a piece of lead if you already think it's gold. If you're holding something that's lead and you're saying, oh, this is gold, no matter what anybody else tells you, it cannot be alchemized. We can't take it from the base elements into the highest vibrational thing that we can create, which is not possible. So we have to know that we're working with lead before there's even a chance that it can be alchemized. But I believe that my magnum opus in life, I believe that what I'm here to do, I was told two things: that it was to help people, the Wheels Reinvented work, childhood trauma and the chakras, and then that there was another piece that I was supposed to do on teaching people about tantra and time. And that's the workshop Autoerotic Wealth, but it's going to take me years. It took years to get Wheels Reinvented to where it is right now, to the point that it can go off in book form. And I believe that Wheels Reinvented was like my first magnum opus, and it took a lot. Autoerotic wealth and erotic wealth both are going to take a lot. It's going to take years and years of me doing this and refining it and clarifying it until it'll be at a level where it can go to the masses in book form, like having to do these processes with so many people. So, and both of these represent big, long alchemical shifts that happened with me. For Wheels Reinvented, it was the journey of going from like, can a healer heal themselves? And is there a way to heal from a messed up childhood without therapy? Is there a way to start this and be done with this? And it took me several times of doing it, because as a teacher, you have to master it. And it's amazing the last little things that were kind of pulled away at this last moment to really be ready to bring it to the public, and the opportunities that arrived really letting me know, like, shit, it's go time. Like, this is ready now, let's go. Because the interesting thing about second level is that you're not always worried that like the universe is blocking you. You understand that the face of God is sometimes destroying, that the face of God is sometimes creating, and the face of God is sometimes neutralizing. And so a lot of times, like when we are in the first level or trying to get God to like us or whatever, because we're in that like BFGF relationship with it, every time we get blocked or we hit difficulty, we're like, oh, it's a sign that I'm not supposed to be doing it. And if it's your magnum opus, like it's your destiny, you have to make it work because you have to. You have to make it work because it doesn't matter how difficult it is. It doesn't matter how hard it is. It doesn't matter how on your own you feel like you are with it. If you got to do it, you got to do it because you must, because this is your life, because this is your magnum opus, because this is your destiny. So there's a really good chance that I butchered that. Like I said, I'm not sure I'm not an alchemy expert, but I did just buy the Kabbalion. So maybe after I read that, I'll have a bit more. It's been cool picking up some of these older, shorter books like the Emerald Tablets of Thoth and stuff, and reading them with a freshened up mind. It's been really cool. But to me, that's just what magnum opus means. Can I relate that to purpose? Can I relate the magnum opus? Yeah, because that is my purpose. Though, so I would say that the magnum opus is the achievement of all of your efforts. So like if I'm actively in the stage of writing a book and I hope it's going to be my magnum opus, there's a really good chance that even by the time it's done and released, that it could be a flop. And that no matter how much I really want to be done with it or not have to run wheels, reinvent it again, or write this book or do a first, second, and third draft of something, which I definitely felt like I was above. To me, the magnum opus is the achievement of it. But here's the thing is like, you can have a purpose and give up on it all the time because it's hard. Like we believe that we should just go from A to B. I put my writing outfit on and made a writing desk. The book should come, right? Oh, the book's not coming. I'm not supposed to. Maybe I should manifest it. Oh, it's not manifesting. I guess it's not for me. Like purpose, it's something that you return to like over and over and over again. And you're committed to bringing it to this level of magnum opus, not just the level of like completed, I'm done with it, now on to the next thing, but really seeing it all the way through and making sure that it succeeds and that it gets into the hands of the people that need it. To me, that's what it is. To me, that's what it is. Now, I'm not an alchemy expert, but to me, that's what it is. So I hope that answers your question. And then I saw somebody else had put a question in the chat. I'm gonna do raised hands answering questions, please, with your actual hand. I'll put it on video and I'll make sure to go through the different rooms on here. But somebody had just put in the chat. So what do I do after the lying homework is done? Come here. We have Thursdays at 11 Eastern. We're meeting here for class. I don't do a lot. You guys will get reminders for these first two calls, but anyone that's in my school knows I don't do reminders. Replay we put up as soon as possible by the next day at the absolute latest. But Thursdays at 11, standing date. We are here. We're getting this done. So next Thursday's class is also free. We have some cool stuff. Let me just show you guys what we have for the next class. Tomorrow we are studying, tomorrow, what is enlightenment? What are the four centers? The issue of I versus it. How did we fall asleep? How can we awaken? The line of knowledge, the line of being, duplicating principle we already covered. What are miracles? Where are we going? And a game that I like to call woke bingo. So you guys will definitely love these. You'll definitely love this one. Hey, Eva. Okay, so I saw Emily had just raised her hand. I'll try and go through these questions quickly. 12 pages of Zoom, you guys. I'm having a great time here. I love this. Okay, and so I'll go on to the next page. So go ahead and take yourself off and mute, Emily. Hi, Wendy.
Oh, wow. I'm surprised. So you talked about having a living teacher to initiate, right? So what is the role? I am being contacted by multiple spiritual teachers and what is the role of a spirit guide? I feel like I'm getting downloads from spirit guides where I'm learning some of what you're teaching is matching the information that's coming in. So what is that role versus a living teacher?
Okay, so I love that. And also just disclaimer, if a spiritual teacher attracts students to them, they don't cold call. So if it's ever anybody in your DMs or anything like that, they haven't figured it out, because this magnetic force pulling on other people's magnetic center, this is how legit teachers get students. It's not cold calling. It's none of that. And if you guys want to see something fun, you guys can go and look at the dream ads story highlight on my page of all these people saying that I came to them in dreams and were like, come to school. And they're like, okay. Now, every single teacher began as a human. Even Jesus started his teaching. He started his initiation really, really young with the Essenes. And they talk about that in the Bible. They just don't really like, it's like, oh, well, if he's the son of God, shouldn't he be like hovercrafting and not have to go to school? But it's even in the regular Bible, it's really evident that he was trained. And I love it, if you grew up religious and discarded it, that's still a valuable foundation. And when you understand the deeper meaning, all of this stuff that you remember from your childhood will open up in a way that's useful, and not in a doomsday is coming way that is not useful. But all of these different teachers had spiritual awakenings, had downloads, had revelations, and that's the welcome to the spiritual path, baby. And what you do with that is your destiny. That's your gift. Like, I wasn't initiated when I started doing Wheels Reinvented. It was 2017 when it all came together. And I had just been studying the chakras for a really long time. And once I started studying childhood trauma and how to repair it, I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I was asking questions like, this is pretty inconvenient. Why does it have to be this way? I have to wait until I'm struggling to be able to get to the bottom of it. How do I know when I'm done? And as a result, I was just in my kitchen one day and it hit me like a sack of bricks. Like, you need to do it like this. A voice came in the kitchen just as clear as anything. And I was like, what's this? But said, you're going to teach 2 workshops that alter the course of humanity. The first one's on childhood trauma and the chakras, and the other one is on tantra and time space. And I was just thinking actually in the bathroom today, like, shit, what happens when I'm done with that workshop? Like, am I going to like panic and be like, well, what's my destiny now? Because it took 7 years to achieve the first one. And now, but now I'm working on a publishing company. So hopefully I never get to the top and I'm like, shit, what am I doing here? Everyone has awakening, but what a teacher helps you do, a teacher initiating you from one level of consciousness to the next helps you to get comfortable. Think about when you went through your first spiritual awakening and how much easier it would have been for you if there was somebody there. And this isn't typical for that first awakening, but how much easier it would have been for you. I've got to go to gallery view because I know you guys will resonate with this. That first spiritual awakening where it's like grippy sock status. If there was somebody there that was like, this is normal. Don't worry about it. Just keep going this way. Don't fucking check yourself into a psych ward. Not necessary. Don't worry about the lack of sleep. Maybe chill on the weed for a little bit if it's working for you or if it's not working for you, but ground, and you'll get through it. Like, as a new level of consciousness is being downloaded into your brain, like software, the hardware, your being, the way that you are, the way that you're operating, there's a lag that can be really uncomfortable. You're in one world over here, you're in one world over here. And what a teacher helps you to do is make that transition and help you to realize and identify the way that your being is incongruent with your thinking. Because all of us know, gotta drink more water. All of us know what to do, but understanding and applying it is super different. So many people are like, well, I don't need a teacher to go from duality into oneness because I intellectually know that oneness is the truth of existence. But the problem is that digestion, being able to take something that you know, but apply it to your life on a case-by-case basis. A teacher that's initiating you will be like, yeah, don't pay attention to that. Don't get involved with this conflict. No, this is the way. And a teacher at this level, it's just a signpost. It's just a signpost. So if I'm holding a sign that says Las Vegas is 200 miles this way, someone can come and shake their fist at the signpost all they want. But the signpost is like, I'm just a signpost. Las Vegas is 200 miles this way. If you choose to go any other direction, totally fine. But I've been there and I've also been the wrong way. And I know that it's this way. So I'm just going to stand here holding the sign pointing that way because that's the function of a teacher. Now, why does it have to be a living teacher? Is because the times are, it always feels like we're in original times, and that maybe these things were true then, but are they true right now? Like maybe we shouldn't get involved, but when we're actively witnessing a genocide, shouldn't we get involved? Isn't this reason to get involved right now? A living teacher helps you to understand that the same age-old truths are still true today. And I know that this was my experience, and I know that this was a lot of other students of mine experience as well, of even coming across sacred texts like advanced books when they were really young and reading and being like, wow, this is cool, but not really understanding how to apply it until much later on in life. Typically, you can be exposed to these things the same way that there's parables in the Bible that you know and you can even chew on and be like, what does this mean? But it doesn't really open up for you until a living teacher opens that door. It's an oral tradition passed down with sound current. Teacher is here to kind of modify it until it's something that you can understand. And then once you have that, like the second that I had the door open for me, which I told you about, the teacher that initiated me in email, when I had that door open for me, all of a sudden I could study books and I did understand. And I'll never really be able to explain how that was, because I remember when I first started working with her, she told me to pick up the book, The Fourth Way by P.D. Ouspensky, and I did. And it was like, I just could not get through it. I would literally like I could read the same page over and over and not remember that I had read that page. Like it wasn't sticking. And it was really frustrating me because I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't know what the fuck you're saying. And so I had to hear it in contemporary language. And like as we become more and more, I don't want to say fussy, because that's not it. But as our standards for how we want to be spoken to as a collective becomes higher and higher, even simple facts like the fact that all these spiritual texts were written for men only, that they only talk, that there was no like women involved in it at all, this would even be a barrier to entry for somebody that has that's fussy about something like that. Me, I don't care. Now I care a bit more, but that might be cause for somebody to just throw out the book altogether, to be like, you know, why isn't this for women as well? And the reason why it's not is because you're here to change that. You're here to speak it in your language and be that representation and be that living teacher, because your students can only hear from you. And teachers, I really want you to be aware of this. Stop recommending books to other people. Stop saying, if somebody's asking you, how do I do this? It's okay to tell them, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. But telling them, oh, go read this book or go do this is you being lazy as a teacher. That's not going to give them the result. They're asking you. They need to hear it from you. It doesn't matter if everybody else has said this before. They need to hear it from you. And if you really struggle with this, is their original thought, can I be an individual? Then practice singing mantras. Put on any mantra that you can find and sing along with it. And when you realize that like your voice contributes something new to this old ass thing, no matter how you think it should or shouldn't sound, this will help you to get comfortable speaking. They need to hear it in your language. So, and then I get asked this question a lot, but it's a good way to close out this answer. My criteria for a teacher, for finding a teacher, is super, super simple. And I think that this will be useful for you. Criteria number one, have they been where you want to go? Have they been where you want to go? We are not ever, weighing and measuring teachers by what it is that they're saying, because anyone can give you a charismatic pitch about why them, but watching how they behave, especially in times of conflict. Also looking into, the quality of their life. If they're constantly complaining about being, overworked or overtired, they seem drained, they seem angry. I think a really good question is to ask, were they happy? Were they happy? Did they seem happy? Because this is a very special life that we're living in. Did they seem like they were having a good time? Did they get a kick out of all of this? Because So I find really good teachers usually have a pretty good sense of humor. Ram Dass, I think, is hilarious. Is absolutely hilarious. But every time I listen to too much Ram Dass, I always want to get on the path of the renunciate and like stop working and stop charging for my work. And people really need to, people don't value what they don't pay for. It's just, you're not going to wear, if you get the fanciest pair of underwear, you're not going to wear them when you're on your period unless you're being like, I deserve it. Because how you treat something that's expensive and valuable is different than how you treat something that was cheap. You wear your little, I don't have any underwear, so I don't know. But people treat things differently when they value them. Another example is like, you could be sitting at a bar and some friggin' person missing 5 teeth next to you is like, you gotta love yourself. And you're like, shut up. It doesn't, gift is given, not received. But you'll go and pay a coach $700 for an hour and they'll tell you the same thing. And you're like, oh, okay. The difference is though, is the teacher will be able to tell you when you're like, well, how do I love myself if I hate myself? How do I love myself if I hate myself? Anyone here want to know how to love yourself if you hate yourself? Don't try to love yourself. Don't try to love yourself. Throw the word love like out of your vocabulary, because real love is not wanting to change something or someone. So just focus, instead of trying to love yourself, just try to accept yourself. I want you to take pictures of the exact, like the problem areas of your body that you don't like. And I want you to set them as the background of your phone and look at them until you can think, it's kind of cute. Kind of cute. In a way, I could see how that's kind of cute. If you ever take an ugly selfie, don't throw it away. Force yourself to look at it until you can find a way of being like, kind of cute. This kind of cute is accepting. This is who I am. What if you didn't have to change anything about who you are or how you are? What if you just had to accept, this is who I am and this is how I am? Don't try and love yourself. Love is like, it's hard. But accepting, loving something unconditionally is the same as accepting something, and it's the same as forgiving something. All three of these things, unconditional love, forgiveness, and acceptance, are the same thing. Accepting that people are how they are, things were how they were, and you are how you are. And that's just how you are. And that's just how you are. And you say, okay, well, if I accept that I've got like, mom pooch or whatever, doesn't that mean that I'm going to have it forever? The miraculous thing is that it's only when you accept something that you can change, because when you resist something, it stays in front of you like an opponent that you're always battling it with. The second you accept something, it becomes a part of you. If you accept the whole world, you don't have opponents anymore. That's the value of oneness. We're all on one side. Nothing can be against you. If you don't have any opponents, there's no reason why you can't get what you want. You just have to work. You just have to work, and that's okay. We love work. But the second you accept something about yourself, it's only then that it can be changed. We'll do one more question if it's a quick one. I'm on 59, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go specifically to, okay, where I'm at the second page of video here right now. Go ahead and raise your hand if you're on this page, you want to ask a question. Okay, cool. I've got no one on the second page. Let me go to the first page. Anyone want to ask a question? Okay, Aoife, of course, with your baby. Of course, go ahead.
Hi, he's not happy
Hi.
right now. Hello.
That's okay, baby. That's okay.
Hey, it's here. The thing is here. It's here. It's here. It's here. It's here.
That's okay. Your little piece of paper. Your little piece of garbage.
He's getting frustrated.
I get it.
Oh,
That's okay.
I'm not wearing any pants, so I can't stand up. You mentioned in the newsletter, I think, about when you learned the 48 laws, that you sort of instantly eradicated anxiety from your life.
I can definitely speak to this a little bit. Now, I definitely, is that the question? Do you want to add anything else to this?
Yeah, I want to know this. What's your secret?
Yeah, no problem. I can definitely help you out with this. So when I was in a position very similar to you, My business was doing okay. I was a mom to a new baby and everything was going pretty well. I was just constantly overwhelmed with anxiety that my kid was going to die, that my husband was going to die. And I had anxiety in every possible location, like driving down the street, semi truck is going to hit us. Going outside, there's going to be a snake. Like there was every single, I just couldn't enjoy my life because I was so friggin' anxious about what was going on around me and that and how it would impact. And I felt very validated in this because I had lost my fiance. And so I would, you know, when my husband was like, don't be anxious, I was like, well, easy for you to say because you've never lost somebody that you love. And I have. And so I'm scared that that's going to happen again. And the first of the 48 laws that I learned of was the law of imagination. And the law of imagination says that imagination isn't real. Imagination isn't real. No matter how spontaneous the imagination was, no matter how much of a premonition it might seem like, no matter how much it seems to parallel things that have happened in the past, imagination isn't real. And the law of imagination is that you never imagine yourself succeeding. If you imagine yourself succeeding, we call it visualization. It's hard. We hardly ever do it. We have to like wait for the right moon phase to do some visualizing. Whereas imagination happens like a hell ride spontaneously and takes you on this like roller coaster that you don't know isn't real. And it's hard because spiritual people will be like, oh no, it's real. You know, it's a premonition. This is definitely going to happen. And then we can become hostile towards people that aren't as worried as we are about things that aren't real. So just because you imagined it doesn't make it real. Just because you imagined it doesn't make it real. But this is how imagination develops. And we don't love the imagination in the fourth grade because it's so different from visualizing. It's so different from visualizing. And so they're just to differentiate. If you have like an Einsteinian attachment to the word imagination, that's not relevant here. Visualizing, positive imagination. Imagination on its own is anxiety for the most part. When knowledge exceeds being, it becomes imagination. And imagination is kind of like a fungus or an infection of the mind because it can just pop in whenever, take over whenever, put you into a mineral state where you're shaking and scared and you can't absorb your surroundings. You can't receive help because your brain's got you all like rattled up. And how this develops is when you've taken in too much information but you haven't changed your behavior. So like as a new mom, there's no fault of yours, but as a new mom, you know, you're constantly taking in so much information about how to raise these kids, things that could happen to kids. Did you know that kids choke on grapes and hot dogs? Did you know that water is bad for kids? Did you know that you can't give honey to kids? Did you know that if you do this, they're going to be traumatized? You know, and you're taking in so much information without experience really like being able to live in it and see what works for you and what doesn't work for you. So when so much is ingested at a rate that's so much faster than you could apply it, it becomes imagination, and imagination just torments you. So once I learned that I didn't need to pay attention to imagination because it's not a good, it's not a premonition. It's not telling me, it's not mentally preparing me. Mentally preparing is basically like validated anxiety, you know, giving yourself these permission slips to just stress the fuck out about something. I would just have to say to myself, imagination isn't real. I would have to say it to myself out loud when I was fantasizing about a mountain lion breaking through our fence, when I was worried that, you know, was there honey in the yogurt that my kid ate? Is he dying? I thought that both of my kids were deaf for like 3 weeks, which is a very strange imagination and kind of hard, you know, if you're doing like hearing tests on newborn babies that are asleep all the time. Like I had a lot of anxiety, but imagination isn't real. And to bring it even broader, because this was something the teacher that I worked with that initiated me, she had lost her daughter to SIDS. And that was one of the main reasons why I wanted to work with her, because I was like, how could you possibly talk about God at all after losing a child to SIDS? But she explained, she told me that, and I'm going to tell this to anybody that's experienced a big loss in their life. When you're on your path, crazy shit doesn't have to happen to you. So I wasn't on my path with my fiance that died, and I knew it. I wasn't on my path, and I knew it. And I knew it the whole time, but I didn't know how to leave. She said that as a mother at that stage in her life, she was not on her path, and she knew it. She had the being a mom to her baby that she had lost was going to become her whole world, and she wasn't doing the work that she knew she needed to do. And there was some other stuff going on at the time as well, which isn't my story to tell. But horrible things happen to get you where you're supposed to be. And if you look back in your life and you see that like all of these horrible things have actually put you exactly where you needed to be to do the things, to receive the things that you have now, that's why they had to happen. But when you're doing your thing, the universe I used to fear that if I like surrendered to the universe, that the first thing that would happen would be like my kids would die, which tells a lot about the type of God that I was believing. And I said, I believe that God is love, but when it comes to surrendering to that God, the God that I was conditioned with in duality was coming out, the type of God that wants you to sacrifice your children. My children help me do my job. My children are a part of my destiny. My husband is a part of my destiny. Financial stability is a part of my destiny, because the happier, the healthier, the better cared for, the more peaceful all of these conditions are in my life, my family, my finances, my sense of home, all of this, the more peaceful these things are, the better work I do. Now, if something happens to one of my children one day, I used to say, like, God, if anything happens to my children, I'm out. This is my contract with God. Yes, everything else is blank. There's literally not one thing that I would say no to. And no matter what happens, I will deal with it. No matter what happens, I will continue on my path. No matter what happens, I won't drop this work, because I'm committed. I'm committed. But my belief in a God that would kind of get off on putting me through pain and agony just for the sport of it, that's not a God that I believe in anymore. So let's just recap these facets. You can reduce the amount of anxiety in your life by reducing your intake. So stop parenting books, don't watch parenting TikToks, don't watch any of the parent, if it's anxiety in relation to your kid, like stop taking it in, and just let yourself be a primal, it's innate. This mothering journey is innate. If you're anxious about conflict in the world, stop taking it in. When knowledge exceeds understanding, it becomes imagination. Imagination is a pain in the ass. When you catch yourself mid-imagination, say out loud to yourself, imagination isn't real. And sometimes you have to say it a few times. Imagination isn't real, but you don't know that it's not real. That's why you're watching it horrified and be like, oh my God, do they have the terminal illness that I don't know about? And then the last step is that, yes, horrible things have happened to you in your life. Yes, that's true. But they put you on your path, and you're on your path now. Are you doing what you love? Are you doing what you love? That's your path. Are you not doing what you love? That's not your path. Now you can go or be dragged, but you came here to do a thing. You can fight your whole life doing the thing that you love, and your whole life will feel like a fight. Plenty of people live this way. But if you know that you're supposed to be living in a different way and you're not doing that, go or be dragged. But if you're at the point where you're conscious that you're here to do a thing and you're not doing it, you'll get dragged. Now, I'm not, of course, as a new mom, it's not career time, but my kids, if it wasn't for my kids, I would have never learned how to be a successful business person on a very small amount of time. I would have just done what everybody else around me was doing, which was selling all their time, raising. It was really hard for me to work with my coach at that time, because I had a baby. She had like a team of nannies, and I would get updates from her, every now and then, being like, oh, guess how much I charge now? Guess how much I charge now? And 50 grand, for 12 sessions. And And I felt like it was, you can't repay a teacher in 10,000 lifetimes, but I felt like that was pretty fucking expensive. And I don't like that the whole world needs it and so few can get it. But it was really hard for me to watch somebody just selling more and more one-on-one sessions while knowing that I physically couldn't do that because I had to be with my baby all of the time. And getting a nanny was like out of the question for me. It was hard for me to not do what other people were doing, especially when I felt like they were kind of waving it in my face of like, look how successful I am. Like, don't you wish you were doing this? But with time, it worked out really well. So it's not like you're choosing between motherhood or career. Motherhood is teaching you how your career doesn't need all the time that you thought it needed in the past. 90% honing it mentally, 10% acting on what's been honed. All right, you guys, 111. I hope that answers your question. I just need to see your face and see if that made you feel any better. Where'd Aoife go? Where's she at? Is she here? Where'd she go? I know her from classes and class. There you are. You feel a little bit better? I know. Okay, cool. Definitely shoot me an email if you want, but I've been there. Just even if it feels crazy. We just did the Manipura chakra the other day, and I was telling people about this like anxiety steamroll I went down where the white people won, and you guys are unreal. I'm not gonna tell this whole story again, but in time you'll be able to laugh at the fucking crazy video your mind is showing you and be like, it's gonna happen, and you're like, this is so out of pocket. Like, this is so random. Like, how the fuck did I take one? I'll just tell you guys, somebody made a comment on Instagram. I don't even think it was on one of my videos. But a lady spelled white people, WYPIPO. And I thought it was so funny. Like, I was like, this is the funniest word that I've ever read in my whole life. But then I had a coffee, which is always good. If I have a coffee and I'm not allowed to move around, I'll get all of that energy just like implodes into anxiety in my head. And so I had a coffee, but my daughter woke up. So I was like lying in bed with her while the caffeine's just surging. And my mind was showing me this whole video of how in some other reality, I'm walking through the streets of Brooklyn and a little black kid trips and skins its knee. And I go to pick up the baby. And then the mom screams at me, get your filthy white people hands off my baby. And I'm like, what? And everyone's looking at me. And then I lose my career. And everyone's like, what? This is, and I was trying to help, but I ended up hurting. And my mind just would not stop on like this video, and by the time I caught it, I was like, damn, like that's fucked up. That's a really strange, so out of pocket. What the hell? All of this coming from one comment that I saw that wasn't even directed at me. And now I'm like tweaking. So I laughed that one off. And then immediately up comes the next one. Like, what's I worried about? Oh, maybe your daughter has a tooth infection or just some random thing. Because once I'm anxious, once that imagination is going off, it just supplies me with more and more options. Well, how about this? Well, how about this? Well, how about this? But with time, like when I say imagination isn't real, the scared feeling goes out of my body. The thought is still there, but I can watch it to be like, fucking tell me. Tell me what you think is going down here. I want to hear the whole story. Because when I look at it without being identified with it, when I'm looking at it like, okay, my mind is showing me something that's putting me into a state of terror without being like, this is happening, or maybe it's going to happen, which is what it means to be identified with it. It's usually pretty funny. Like, it's usually pretty funny how fucking insane I am. And that's my work. So that's a wrap for today. Standing date on Thursdays, you guys. Please don't forget your homework of lying. I will see you next Thursday at 11. Had such a good time being here, and we'll see you next week for more Mesoterica. Thank you so much. Have a good day.